All right, I think we can carry on. And thanks again for joining the webinar. Let's start off by looking at the agenda for today. So I'll start off by introducing boundary system and myself. And we will also go through this topic overviews here. So we're covering 3 topics today. I will be covering application lifecycle management, as well as test cases using a PTC tool called Integrity. And we also have Shai on the call, who will be taking us through the FMEA through Windchill reliability tool. We also have Michael, who will take us through the general PLM and BOM management, and also a service information tool called Significant. And then we'll all do a basic demonstration of the tool, and right at the end, we'll then take questions and answers. So if you have a question during the webinar, feel free to start typing the question in the questions session or section of the poll. So you can start doing that, and right at the end, we will respond to your questions. All right. An introduction on just before boundary systems. My name is Ifram Poyeng. I am a PLM specialist at Boundary Systems with over 6 years experience on PTC products, specifically Windchill. I am also certified to train and implement all Windchill products. So about Boundary Systems, we regard ourselves as the technology leader. So we partner with PTC, Utraj, and other technology companies to make sure that we deliver a comprehensive solution for our customers, make sure that it meets all their needs. We also number 16 fastest growing private company in Greater Cleveland area, and also part of a PDSVISION group of global companies. So if you look at the map on the right, you'll see all the companies that falls under PDSVISION. So we basically cover most of the time zones in there. So we're able to give the 24-hour support because of the number of companies that are part of this group. We offer capabilities in product lifecycle management, data management. We also assist our customers with CAD design or product design and consulting, simulations. We also assist them with the product development processes. A bit more about Boundary Systems. We have won a couple of industry awards. We are also accredited by PTC as their platinum partner. They are Windchill certified implementers, preferred service providers. We are also certified by them and authorized by them to train on these tools here. So we also do custom trainings that basically meets the customer requirements, and we do workshops based on those. So as I've said, our main partner is PTC, but we also partner with other companies that are listed on the slides here to make sure that we cover all our customer needs. Now, so the part that I will be taking you through is the application lifecycle management. So there is different explanation on what application lifecycle management, or ALM as it's popular known, is. So we understand ALM as more about improving the way we manage and build applications, which makes it better for us to deliver more productively, to drive increasing level of business value. So this basically manages the requirements, the specification, which is really the start point of every product development. So next is what are the challenges we have in application lifecycle management in today's work scenario. So the biggest challenge we have today is that the use of software in products is growing rapidly. So many years ago, in your 1960s or so, the use of software on products were very minimal. So most of the product functions were controlled manually by the end users. So nothing was, less things were actually automated on these products. But in modern tools, for all the industries listed here, we have products that uses million lines of software codes and requirements, which needs to be managed properly. So there's a study that says nearly 20% of development cost is due to rework because of ill-defined or poorly managed requirements. And I would say it's more on the poorly managed requirements. So if that's not managed properly at the beginning, we're definitely going to have rework and scrap downstream. Right, so with that in mind, we need to talk about the need for requirement management in today's environment. So we all know that requirements is one of the key disciplines and the foundation of PLM. That is where it all starts. So shown on the slide here is how the requirements is currently stored in most of the companies. So we have requirements that are stored in sticky notes, and some in emails, Excel files, personal drives, and so on. And I mean, if someone like this user here leaves the company, whoever that's going to replace him, it will take him very long time to sort of get to this user's level, because there won't be information available for them, because the user here had information stored in his personal drive and so on. And what this does is we do not have traceability between all these tools, because these are just isolated tools. At this stage, we don't know which version of requirements is latest, and this can lead into feeding outdated requirements downstream. And I mean, not only that, there's also a couple of things like the project spiraling out of control, so we're missing deadlines and so on, and we also obviously sharing the requirements that were never tested. And the other thing also is the inability to detect and communicate change. So if there's a change that comes through, we might apply it on that specific product, but we might not, because of the saturated systems, we might not capture that change properly in the system. And I mean, because these are all separated, they're not using one process to address changes or to address the whole business process. You end up having inconsistent data being all over the place. And again, departments like your quality or even managers don't have visibility or transparency onto the data sitting with other departments or other entities, because I mean, it might be sitting in a Word file somewhere in someone's personal drive. And I mean, obviously, because of not being able to close that loop, we might build a product that doesn't really conform to what the customer had requested initially. Right. So next on the slide is to introduce the PTC Integrity tool and what it can do. So this tool allows you to manage all software development processes and all software engineering artifacts. So everything that's linked to that software development. And it also manages requirements, software management, test management, and system modeling. So today's focus is really on the requirements management here. And you can also see there we can manage system, software, and hardware requirements. So at this stage, I'm gonna go and show you the tool, how it actually works, and how we can actually manage requirements in the tool. So as I've said, the tool is called PTC Integrity. And it manages your requirements, your specifications, the software configuration, or the system engineering configuration on here. So this is the interface. So the interface is built similar to your Microsoft Word, so that it's very easy to be able to use. So the page that we're looking at now basically lists all the requirements that are created in the system. So for an example, if I want to look at the specifications for an example, I can go and filter this table based on the type specification. And by simply doing that, my table is filtered to show me only the specification information. Right, so my focus is on the requirement documents. So I'm gonna just switch this back to that. Right, so these are the requirements, and to open up a requirements document and start working on it, it's simple as just double clicking on a requirement, and it opens it in the content editor. So at this stage, I'm able to make changes to this requirement. I can add some data in there if I need to, some info, and save this. This is now saved. But then again, at this stage, if I want, or if I prefer to use Microsoft Word, I can quickly open up this document in Microsoft Word. I can decide I want to open the complete document, or I just want to open up a certain selection of the document. So I'm going to go ahead and open a complete document. So at this stage, the document is loading, launching Word, and then my document is now open in Microsoft Word. And all my data is shown in here as well. So at this stage, I can go and make changes to this file. So I'm just going to add something to the end of the document title. And then once I'm happy with everything, I save this. And again, at this stage, I can go print this document out so that I can go present it in a meeting, or I can share it with someone else. And so once I've made the changes, I can go close the document, and it asks me if I want to publish the document back into Integrity. So this basically is similar to save and don't save. So I'll go ahead and publish the file. So that information is now pushed back into Integrity. I'm just going to refresh the document. Yeah. It seems like it didn't save my changes there, but yes, you can just open it up in Word and make changes there, and then publish those changes back into Integrity. So the next thing I'm gonna do is create a new requirements from scratch, just to show you how easy it is to do that. So I'll go to Documents menu at the top here, and I can simply say create either an input document, a requirement, a specification document, a test suite, for an example. But in this case, I'm going to go and say I want to create a requirement from a template. So I've got my library with templates in it, and I'm looking for a requirements document template. So you can see these are the requirements and the headings that will be part of this initial requirement document. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. The next thing it asks me is where do I want to save this. I'm going to go and just select a project to save my document in, and then the document is now created. So at this stage, I can go and specify information like who needs to be working on this, or who's the main person working on this document, and what is the name of the document. So we're going to call this one a webinar requirements document. And we can also specify what will this document be used for testing. So we can just say we're going to use it just for a general review requirements. Then click OK. Then my document is created with those basic files in it. So at this stage, I can go ahead and start editing the requirements. And editing requirements is simple as just going to content and just saying insert. What do you want to insert? Do you want to insert the functional requirements or the non-functional requirements? Or if there is any other requirements that you want to capture, you can create those sort of requirements and link them to this document. So I'm creating the functional requirements. I'll go ahead and say this is my first webinar requirement. So you realize that the tool actually manages requirements as like just a bit of information. So if I just want to work on that piece of information or open that piece of information in Excel or Microsoft Word, I can actually open just that piece of file and work on it. The beauty about that is we can have a couple of people working on the same document, but obviously focusing in different sections of that document. So I'm going to go ahead and create a second requirement on here, give it a name. Give it a name, make sure that is saved. All right. So once we've created this requirement, at this stage, I can decide to simply create, or maybe let's change the description or the title of the document as well. Requirements. So at this stage, I can decide to also baseline this document by simply going onto the document and creating a baseline. Give my baseline a name. I'm just going to put it there in 1. And we can just give it description there as well. So baseline is completed. And once that's done, we can do a couple of things. So I can get a test author to create a test case that can be used to verify this requirement here. So at this stage, I'm going to go ahead of a test author. So this is a different view for a test author compared to the requirements author or the business analyst. So in this case, I will then go and create a test suite. So this suite is simply a document that contains multiple test cases in it. Select where we want to save it, and we can go ahead and give it a name. Webinar test suite, and things like description we can also put in there, and the responsible user for this. And yeah, at this stage, I'll go ahead and open up the file. So this is how the test suite will look like. So at this stage, I'll then go and create my test cases. And in my test cases category, I will be creating the performance tests for this requirement. You can just give it the name as well there. In a test case, and I'm just going to create another one, just call it additional additional test case. So this is now created and saved. So at this stage, I can go into the properties of a test case. And this is some of the information you are able to capture in here. Best information is we can capture the expected results for this particular test case. Say something like, so this requirements need to stand a heat of say 200 degrees, for an example. And then the other thing we can also do is add steps that should be followed in testing these requirements. Just clicking on the new test there, and then the test type that you create, and you basically go and keep the details for the test steps. So I'm not going to capture that now because of time. And then yeah, that is now done. Okay. So once we've now created the test cases, I can now go and link the document we've just created, the requirements in there to these test cases. And this is how you're going to do it. So I'm just going to quickly open up that webinar document. And then I'm just going to move the test cases to the bottom here. So these are my test case. So what I'll then do is I'll go select my test cases and simply drag them and drop them on the requirements that I need to link them with. And then see the system tells us that the requirements has been linked to the test case. And again, if you look at the trace status for these requirements, you'll also see that there is a downstream link. And if we look at the test cases here, there's also an upstream link. So this simply means if something changes upstream on our requirements, the test cases will be flagged. The trace suspect will be shown on this test cases here. So let's go ahead and test that. Let's say we decide to make changes to these requirements. Additional changes to the requirements. And we go ahead and save it. So once saved, if you look on the test cases at the bottom here, you'll see that already it's flagged that there is an upstream suspect. So something must have changed in the requirements. So at this stage, you can go look at the requirements that have been linked to a test case, see if there's information on how the requirements have been changed, and if there is a need to actually change our performance, change our test cases to meet the new changes in the requirements. And I mean, you'll do that by simply just from the inline text here, I can go and add some other testing method or other testing information. Testing information, and once I've done that, I can then go into a test case and remove that flag by simply looking at the relationship. I can see that it is linked to this requirement, and I simply go and just remove a suspect flag next to it. And I can also do the same for the other one. We don't need to change anything on this one. It still verifies our requirements. I'll then go and do that and then save. Now you'll see again at the bottom here that that my test cases are now directly linked to the changes done on the downstream. And the next thing on the phase would be to basically do the actual test. How do we go about doing the actual test of this requirement using these test cases here? So to do that, I'll take the role of a test engineer. They also have a different view compared to others, so they can access some of the things that the requirement author cannot access. So to do that, we need to create what we call a test session. So I'll go ahead at this stage and create a new test session. And give it a summary name. Give it a name, and then specify a project where I will be saving this. And again, I can also specify the test objectives. So in this case, we can say we're just testing the long-term durability of the material on one of these parts. And if need be, I can also specify the description. Again, the user, things like priorities, for this test case, for this test session, and the effort that needs to go in, specify the planned date and the end date for it as well. And then the next thing I need to do, I need to add the tests that we will be using this for. We've already created those, so let's just find them. This is the webinar test here, so I'm going to pick on those two and add them in there, and then finished. So if I refresh my view here, oh sorry, if we go back and edit the test, so the next thing that I want to do is I want to put this now in test session, and I can also specify what sort of test type you're going to be doing. So it's going to be a manual test in our case, and then finish. So I can go and just refresh this page here, and I should be able to find my test session. So at this stage, I can just right click and open up the test results editor. So this is where I'll go and say, this test over here has actually passed. So this is after you've obviously done the test. So this test here have passed, and I can also select the second test in the process. So we can see that this is the results that have been expected of the test. And because it didn't meet these expectations, we then go and mark this as a failed test, right? And then at this stage, I can also go and say, okay, my test has now failed. I can actually go ahead and create a defect for this particular test. So just do that, pick on the defect type, and go ahead and specify information about this defect and so on. So once that's done, I can then go and say this test has been completed. We can go ahead and just close it. I can go ahead and close it. So all these types, the test sessions, the requirements, and the test cases, they actually follow a certain workflow that's been controlled in the system. So when it gets to a certain stage, only certain people has got access to this sort of information. So that is all I wanted to show up to now, because of time, of course. And at this stage, I will hand over to Shai.
Wonderful. Thanks for that, Ephraim. Now let me go ahead and share my screen, and I will take it along with. Oh, yep, wonderful. With FMEA. All right. So thanks everyone. This is me, Shai. I've been using PTC products now for well over 7 years. I'm a certified trainer for Creo classes, but also the Windchill quality solutions product line as well. And so I'll first off, I'll jump into the quality solutions product line, and then I'll talk about how this ties with digital thread automotive, sort of in a step a little bit. So basically, in this case, all of these different tools represent different aspects of things you can use the quality solutions family, right? And a huge subset of them are primarily stored under the Windchill quality solutions, which is now called risk and reliability right now. So basically, and within Windchill risk and reliability, you can do prediction analyses, you can do an FMEA, you can use a reliability block diagram, you can do a fault tree analysis, do some maintainability analyses, Markovs, fracas, and a couple others as well. So in this particular example, a demonstration here for this webinar, I will be using the FMEA portion of the module, and probably also a little bit of fracas as well, right? Oh, and then the additional, aspects of the quality solutions family, in PTC world is the documents control, surveillance, and the design control, which are all covered under the Windchill QMS system as well. Now, the current state of, I'll say just sort of stepping back a little bit, maybe taking a, 2,000-foot view, right? The current state of, product development is usually of silos, right? Where engineering is doing something, and reliability or quality have any visibility into, the engineering, right? And so engineering can make decisions with understanding the impact on, reliability, risk, and safety, right? And then on the other hand, it's almost like a baton toss. Reliability receives the design after engineering is done with it, and so you receive the design too late to impact reliability or risk or safety in a meaningful way, right? You almost essentially have to live with what you have, right? And that's currently how our product development is currently done, right? And so PTC Windchill, right, is what essentially creates that digital thread throughout the entire design process, right? Because as my colleague Ephraim was talking about, we can create standards and requirements for how a particular product or component should perform, right? We can define tests about how we can validate that performance, right? That information can then feed into one Windchill system, right? Where, for example, quality solutions goes in and data, and that data becomes part of the, for example, FMEA, right? Where we can then understand, okay, the requirement of this part is that it must meet certain test X defined from requirements management, and so we know that we have to evaluate it against that, right? And if it does not meet test X, that's a failure mode, right? And then we have to analyze the effects and then look at how to improve that. But then the beauty of Windchill is that engineering also has visibility into Windchill as well, right? And so even when it comes to just regular product design or CAD design, right? They can do that inside of the same Windchill system that, for example, the manufacturing engineers, right, are feeding into to look at the manufacturing BOM, right, for example, and where they can create their work instructions out. But then also, there's also support for the aftermarket, part of things as well, where, once a particular product, say, for example, a car, is built and designed, the aftermarket system where you can order spare parts and things like that also feeds into the same Windchill system, right? And so, during the life cycle of a product, say a car, for example, if engineering, realizes, okay, this particular component, is not holding up as well in the field when it comes to the reliability or life expectancy, right? And so we redesigned, component X to take its place, right? And so with Windchill, right, engineering obsoletes the old component and replaces it with component X, right? Because it's all one system, now aftermarket system knows whenever a customer orders a new spare part for this particular product, I'm sending them component X, not sending them the old component, right? Because again, that's been obsoleted, right? And so, Windchill is, the one central glue. It's a digital thread across, all aspects of the product development world, right? And so in this case here, as it relates between, engineering and quality, for example, from the engineering side, you can have, the CAD model where you can define certain characteristics that are critical to quality, right? You can also put in a lot of metadata information inside of the PLM part, right? Then you can synchronize all of that BOM data into Windchill risk and reliability, right? So that way, any quality engineers performing work on that product, they have the latest and the greatest, product structure from the engineering team, right? But again, this is not just one associativity, right? This is more so a two-way, because now any quality-driven change, right? The quality can make recommendations and suggestions that can then feed back into engineering is by way of, for example, a change request, right? So an example of that could be, I don't know, maybe several fracas incidents or problem reports that are linked to a particular, problem component, right? Which quality will see that, right? And as a result, quality can then create a problem report to feed that back into engineering to say, hey, do you mind redesigning this problem component because we have, 10 fracas incidents and 12 problem reports against this one component, right? And so that's sort of how, the digital thread, permeates the entire product development lifecycle. Now, when I talk about, in terms of quality, the one particular module I'll focus on for this webinar is going to be the FMEA, right? And really, it's where you can identify potential failure modes, right? And then prioritize corrective action requirements. Now, FMEA is incredibly flexible, so you can use it either a component level, or you can do a functional FMEA or process FMEA, right? There are several failure libraries that it supports, and I'll show an example of that, time permitting. There's also several industry standard templates as well. You can prioritize, failure modes by the priority number, right? And then you can categorize, okay, which of these hundreds of failure modes over the entire, product, in this case, maybe it's as complex as a car, which of these, most critical failure modes do we want to address, right? And how do we want to make sure we address those? You can also create, Pareto charts as well. And then, P&R and also control plans to document any testing needs, and also, documenting necessary process controls, right? And then the other thing about Windchill risk and reliability is that it is web enabled, at least for the enterprise edition. And so this is something that, just sit on one engineer's, desk or laptop or machine. This is something that every user across the organization can log into the web portal and access all at the same time, right? So again, that enables a collaboration across the entire organization. So at this point, I'll pause here for a quick second, and we'll jump into a quick product demonstration. All right, wonderful. So what we have here right now is Windchill risk and reliability. And right now we're looking at the home page, right? And so just again, as I mentioned earlier in the in the presentation, there are many different kinds of reliability initiatives that can be performed through risk and reliability, right? These are the ones that you can use, right? In this case here, I currently have FMEA and fracas modules enabled, right? But again, enabling another module is just as simple as checking a box, right? So in this case here, I'll go ahead and open up the system file for the car, and then we'll take a look at a couple items here when it's done updating. Okay, we don't need to check for updates right now. All right, so in this case here, I'll start off here with the FMEA, right? And again, Windchill risk and reliability has the ability to perform, a component, a functional, and a process FMEA. Right? In this case here, we'll start, for example, here with the functional FMEA. Right? And if I go into there, I can take a look at the system tree and just taking a look at, functionally what different items should be doing. So if I pick service breaks in the system tree item, for example, see here, oops, no, go to FMEA worksheet. We'll see over here, for example, that there are several different functions, right, that have been defined for what these service breaks should do, right? So, for example, some of the requirements are saying, hey, the service break shall comply with requirements of MV FMVSS 121, right? And so again, some of these, item functions over here are things that you can feed into from Windchill Integrity, which Ephraim was just discussing earlier, right? Now, alongside from that, you can then look at, potential, failure effects. There's rank their severity, occurrence, and then the potential to detect them, right? Another thing that I'll point out real quick when it comes to automotive that can be helpful is the parameter diagram, or the P diagram, right? Which is usually very common in automotive. To start a product design using a P diagram, right? And usually, and again, this is just a supplemental tool that allows users to understand, okay, for a particular item, right? What are some of the inputs that have to be designed for, right? What are some of the ideal functional outputs, right? And if those functions are not being performed, what are the error states, right, or failure modes, right? But then also, what are any of the noise parameters that you could that could what's it called what are some of the noise parameters that could occur as a result of that particular design, right? Now, the other thing that I will jump into here very quickly is the a DFMEA, right? Okay. All right. Now, in this case, since this is more component-based, right? If I go into, actually, I'll go over here into the system FMEA tree items. That's for the system tree. If I go into here, notice that this has almost the entire BOM level of your product structure, right? And so anything engineering has or creates in terms of a assembly level BOM, right, can feed into Windchill quality in here, right? I can see, what sub-assemblies and additional sub-assemblies underneath that they have, right? You can drill down to see the entire structure, right? If there's any change to the engineering BOM from the engineering side, the Windchill, that can feed into the reliability side right in here, right? You can see all of that. The thing that I can also do here very quickly makes this fairly easy to use, because again, with a car, we can have over 3, 4, 5,000 parts or components. It's fairly simple to come in here and just do a quick search to say, hey, let's search for this particular part model, right? Look for that, and yep, and Windchill, yep, and it says, okay, I found it. This is a part you're looking for, right? Or I could say in this case, oh, didn't want to select everything. Yep, that's what I want. A needle bearing reverse gear. That's the part I want to find. And it goes to find, okay, and it also expands the structure to show me, hey, here's that component in here, right? So again, searching through 5,000 parts, if you want to specify, for example, part number, right? That's something that's very easy to do in here, right? Now in here, so we can take a look at this particular component. We can take a look at, for example, we can describe one of the functions of that item, right? we can then define what are the failure modes, right? In this case, okay, if there's a leak, well, if there's a if the failure mode is for example, there's a loss of lubrication because of this needle bearing, right? What could happen? It could leak, right? If there's a leak, what's the severity of that leak, right? Well, this particular component here is in my transmission assembly, so yeah, that would be pretty severe, right? And what would be the potential causes, right, or mechanisms of that failure to happen, right? And we can go ahead and specify, maybe, for example, we could say corrosion, for example. And then, what would be a way to, prevent that particular failure mode from occurring? So we could say maybe, let's write a specific in the specifications manual. This particular component should be inspected every 5 or 10,000 miles when the car comes in for service or dealership, right? Now that's information that can then get into service manuals, right? Or I could also say or you could also say, in this case here for, current controls detection, right? So how can we, detect that? We can specify, something for that here as well, and then define, what detection score is going to be as well, right? Now for all of these here, when you specify that, you can Windchill risk and reliability can then go ahead and calculate an RPN number, right? And then, when you perform this FMEA, from a bottom-up approach for the entire product of the car, for example, you can then start to rank by, the highest RPN numbers to make sure that those ones are effectively mitigated and controlled throughout the entire design cycle. Okay. The other thing I'll mention about this over here is that if we jump in that, there's also the ability to read in certain failure mode libraries as well. And these are libraries that have, for different standard components like capacitors, resistors, bearings, or things like that, what are some of the common failure modes that could occur? And that way it makes the process of creating an FMEA much, much simpler, because a lot of that information is already pre-existing, and you can just sort of read in from that. Right? The last little bit here I'll talk about before I jump out of this would be the fact that against a particular component, right, we can also associate any fracas incidents, right? And so again, this is moving away from FMEA into fracas, where in fracas is essentially failure report, and corrective action system, right, where either during in-house testing before the product is released, or during the actual lifetime of the product as it's being used, or the service life of the product, if there's any fracas incidents, right, we can go ahead and specify that in here, right, and say, okay, for this particular component, right, there's a fracas incident where there's a particular failure effect that happened, right, and maybe I'll just pick anything here, for example, right. Now the beauty of this is if we need to then go ahead and escalate this as a problem for engineering to fix, maybe there's an issue here where it's happened several times and we want the engineering to fix that. This is something where I can go ahead and say, let's escalate this to a problem report, right? And if I go into my problems over here, I'll see there's this new problem report that comes in here, right? I can give it a description of that problem, right? And if I go ahead and right click on that problem report, I can go ahead and initiate a change request from there, right? And that will automatically pull out, in this case, Windchill PDM or PLM, right? Where I'm now initiating a change request from quality back to engineering to say, hey, this particular, component here has been failing in the field. Do you mind redesigning this particular portion of it, right? You can specify any, a description, any proposed solutions, right? And in this case over here, Windchill automatically knows, okay, for that particular problem, what's the affected end item? In this case, the car, right? And also, what are the affected objects? In this case, this needle bearing, right? If there are any additional objects, we can add them to it as well. And then, add any. And then over here in the attachment section, Windchill already knows, okay, this problem report is coming from Windchill Risk and Reliability into Windchill PDM or PLM system, right? And so again, the glue that holds everything together in your product design, from whether it's through quality requirements or through the engineering piece of it, there, it's all going to be centered around the Windchill suite of solutions that PTC has, right? So at this point, I will pause right here and pass it on to my colleague Mike to continue along. So.
Alrighty, making myself the presenter. And I am going to show my screen. And just briefly about me, and then I'm really just going to jump into Windchill, just kind of pick up where Shea left off. Once again, my name is Michael Wimberly. I, of course, work for Boundary Systems Solution Architect. And I have been working with PTC products now for over 25 years. I've been training them for over 20 years. I am a certified trainer and for Creo and Windchill classes, as well as a Windchill implementation specialist. As I said, for me, that's pretty much where I wanted to stop with my PowerPoint, just because I really want to get into Windchill. So Shea just mentioned that once he finished, or he had the problem and he then had that problem converted into a change request. So with that change request, that would now come into engineering, and whomever the engineer is assigned to receive those tasks would now receive a task to tell them to analyze a change request. Now, this is different than the one that Shea was creating, but as far as what's associated with it, but they will see a task just like this that says analyze a change request, and then it will actually have the number of the that he actually assigned to that change request. So when you open it up, what you will see is the information from there. We can go in directly and go into the change request to see, the items that are associated with it. For this one, this is a CAD file that we will go through and change. For the other one, it will give us a link back to the FMEA system that Shea was in, and we will go in and be able to view at least the initial page that was actually created that has all the information as far as what the problem was. With that, once we've gone through, our job at this point is now to analyze that change, or I'm sorry, the request for the change, and see whether or not we want to move forward with it the way that they're suggesting, or whether or not we want to go a different route to go in and do it. With that, that's where we have these voting options down here at the bottom, which is fast track. That says, okay, yep, we see it. Let's go ahead and move through and get this done. We can do a full track, and this will basically now will review an actual change review board. So now it's not just the person that's receiving this that's approving it, or maybe one or two other people. We're actually going to go through and now involve maybe the person from quality that submitted it, somebody from manufacturing, the engineering manager, whomever needs to go in and have that discussion about that item. Or I can send something back and says, hey, I need some clarification, and add some notes up here. I can reassign it to somebody else to evaluate. We can go on and reject it, or we can go through and send it for a different type of a review, depending on what was necessary. But this is where what Shea created, this is now where it moves forward from here. So that's the change request that we get whenever it's created. Now, once again, that was coming from quality into Windchill as a whole. So now let's go into Windchill as a whole. So when you go into Windchill, so Windchill, once again, is the PLM system, which is Product Lifecycle Management. What that does, it manages your entire product through its life cycle. So we're looking at from concept all the way to production or even into obsolescence, so we can track it all the way and bring in the different elements that were just talked about earlier. So the things with integrity, the things with quality, all that information, we can bring some of that information into Windchill and store that into a common location. So we have that. There's also the ability, of course, to be able to link some of the quality items directly into Windchill and not just through a change management as well. So there's a lot that can be done because, once again, we're looking at this as an enterprise system, not just a simple data management. So all the different elements of Windchill can actually be viewed and worked with. So what we're looking at here is just my home page. The workspaces here are what I use when I'm working on the actual CAD system. So when I'm actually working in Creo, I'm actually activating a workspace in Creo that connects me to Windchill. So everything that I'm seeing here will also be present in my internal browser inside of Creo. But not only does it work for Creo, it also works for other pieces of software such as SolidWorks, such as CATIA, such as Inventor, things like that. So you can also go in and use those in Windchill as well. So although Creo may not be your native software, Windchill still manages those software applications. Now, from here, the way data is stored inside of Windchill, we store it in what we call products or libraries. So products are basically your product, and how you organize them are based on how you want to be organized. A lot of them are based on an actual full product, but I've also seen them organized based on a object type. So all of a particular object are stored in a product as well. Then we have libraries. Libraries, of course, will be common files, things like your hardware, commercial files, all that information can be stored in there. Then we also can get into projects. Projects is kind of, we kind of labeled a little bit kind of as an internal sandbox where we're kind of developing something, but we're not ready for it to be a full product yet. So we can go in and work in this project and be able to bring in people outside of our organization to work in there as well. The only data that they will ever see will be the data that is inside of that project. They won't have access to any other products, libraries, or anything else. They will be limited to what's inside of there. And then there's a bunch of additional things, excuse me, changes, of course, what we just talked about, which is change requests, change notices, and problem reports. And I'm not going to go through everything else, but there we also see a link to quality information as well. So there's a link that we would have between us and quality to go through and link that data. And then, of course, those are organization level. So for this, I'm just going to go into this product that I have here called MW Demo Product, and I'm going to go in and look into its folders. Now, the data that can be stored inside of Windchill is basically limitless. There's a lot of information. You can do them natively, such as all of our CAD type files. As I said, Creo, CATIA, SolidWorks, Inventor, those items can be stored natively. We can also store just overall data. So if we need to also store Word documents, PDFs, all those things can also be stored inside of Windchill as well. You can see there's a PDF file. Somewhere up here is an Excel file. And you can store, I always tell people, anything that is an electronic file can be stored inside of Windchill because you can attach it to a document inside of Windchill and store it, and now maintain the revision history of that file. So yeah, if you have a movie file or FEA that you've gone through and run, okay, we bring that FEA in there, we store it. Okay, you run another one, you bring in the next one, now that becomes .2 of that particular file. So when we look at these different files, you can see the versions of those different files. If I come over here and let's go to this part here. This is at a revision 2.1. We can always see the history of files. And this is an actual Creo file. If I come back here, I also have, where did it go? I had a SolidWorks file. If I go into this one, you can see the history of this file from 1.1 all the way to 1.6. And when you look at the details of that specific file, you can see that it does recognize that it is a SolidWorks file. So it recognizes its actual native software. So it can be brought in. Windchill has workgroup managers that actually will integrate directly with those other applications. So you are working in SolidWorks, but you're still storing your data inside of Windchill. So all of that can be done inside of there. As I mentioned, the other thing that we can also look at is we can look at assemblies. With assemblies, those actually have structures. So we can go through and look at the structure of that assembly as a CAD file. And we can see that there. But we also have the ability to show them, that's what these little gear parts are, what are called WT part files. WT simply stands for Windchill technology. It is a part that is specific to Windchill itself. Inside of here, we can go through and define that information as well. Now, in finding data, I can search directly inside of this folder by searching here, or if I'm not 100% sure where that file is located, I have a global search that I can use up here at the top. Now, I can come up here and just type in what it is that I'm looking for, and there they are. So there's quite a few that have the name blower inside of them. Now that's 46 different items. I can go through and filter down. There are some default filters. I can customize my view. I can always sort. And now I'm looking at just the assemblies, then the parts, and I'm sorry, the CAD parts, and then the WT parts, and there's even documents down here as well. And I can also come up into the into this search table and go in and find it as well. But I am looking specifically for this blower demo assembly of the WT part. So I'm going to go in and select on that. When I go in and select on that, I see its structure as well. But the other thing that's beneficial is, remember I mentioned that you can go through and bring in multiple file types. So we're talking documents, videos, whatever it may be. We can go through and continue to bring those files in. Now, the benefit of this is when I go in and find this blower assembly, I can go to the related objects area, and inside of there, I can see all of the documents as well as the CAD file that is associated with this blower assembly. So when you are going in and creating your complete product, you know, we want to go in and be able to collect everything. We want to be able to find everything. A lot of times without a PLM system, those things are stored in different folders on your hard drive, and you kind of have to remember where they are. Inside of Windchill, we can use this WT part file and link those different files to that WT part file. So when I find this blower assembly, I can go in and find all of its related information. They're all managed individually with inside of the system. This WT part just kind of brings all that information together. The other thing that I can do is not only can I use it, for finding the links, but I can also go in and use it for finding, you know, my other structures as well. So I can also use this BOM. So we have engineering BOMs and we have manufacturing BOMs. With our engineering BOMs, we will go through, and of course, more than likely, it is just like what we see in our CAD files. So we'll be able to go in and see that directly in our structure. So if I'm looking here, one of the things that I can do is I can go in and select the information here, and I can tell it, yeah, show me all of my CAD files that are related to what I have highlighted, and it'll show the CAD files for each one of those objects. So it'll show me all of those. Now, the other thing, as I mentioned, we have a design BOM, which is our E-BOM, but we also have a manufacturing BOM. Now, the difference between the two is our E-BOM is based on engineering requirements. Our manufacturing BOM will be based on manufacturing requirements. So what do they need other than the things that are in the engineering BOM? And does the engineering BOM structure meet what the manufacturing production is going to be? So what I'm able to do is now change this, and I've already created one where this is now a manufacturing BOM. So I've actually created a BOM already that will show me manufacturing. So now I've converted this top level assembly to a manufacturing BOM, and I've added manufacturing specific information. So inside of here, I've added some tooling. So I can go in here, and if there are other things that I want to go through and add, I can do that as well. So I can come over here and say, yep, I have a new file that I want to go in and bring in. And the name of it is, it has adhesive in the name. I don't remember if it's the beginning or the end, so I'm going to use wildcard characters. And there it is. I want to go through and use this adhesive and add that to my structure. Now for this one, it did go through and add it underneath here, which was not actually my intention. So I can come over and I can copy that, come over to here, paste it at that level. And now it becomes there. And now I can go in and just simply remove that from that structure. So yeah, I accidentally put it underneath the tooling just because I had that highlighted when I said add, and all I did was copy and paste it. I copied it from underneath tooling and put it back at the top level. But I can continue to go in and add manufacturing files. I can create new manufacturing files, whatever I need to do to go in and continue to build up my manufacturing BOM. So I do have the manufacturing BOM, and I can always go between that BOM and my design BOM, and it will only show me my design level information. Now, as we continue to build up our different bill of materials, whether we're looking at a manufacturing BOM, engineering BOM, there is a third BOM that is also used, and that is also a service BOM. Now, with a service BOM, that's of course more related to service parts to go in, or field service, where they will go in and now have things that they need. Now, to do that or to benefit from that, there's also another tool that we have that is called significant. What that does, it actually allows us to take our service BOM that we build inside of Windchill, using our structure here, as well as things such as Creo Illustrate, to go in and give us nice, pretty pictures. And now we can incorporate that actually into the customer's website. We actually have a customer that we work with that actually has this already implemented completely into their website. So going to here, they have a support area, and under support, they have this item that is called Parts Catalog. Once we go into there, we can now come down here and specify where do we want to go in and look for parts. So I'm going to come over here to their planners and all their tilling equipment. Now, inside of here, it now breaks it down into their 4 main categories. Now, at this point, we are actually in this significant data. So this is the actual application for significant that we've gone through and implemented. So depending on which area we want to go into, we can go in and start to drill in. So I'm just going to go into tillage. And then from there, it breaks it down into the different areas. Once again, we're still in that same, the significant area. And as we continue to drill, we get further and further down into the structures. And what are we looking for? Remember, I talked before, you know, there we have our spare parts, there we have our wear parts, there's our tools. So I was even mentioning that when we were looking at our manufacturing BOM, that would even be something that we would go in for our manufacturing BOM. So what is that we're looking at? Let's look at spare parts. So maybe something is wearing down. All right, now, where do we want to look? what area is wearing down. So this is where we would now go through and specify the specific area that we want to go through and find the parts for. So we're going to go over into the frame, and then with the frame, it goes in and now brings up the framing. So you have frame left, frame center, and frame right. I can go through and select on that. If I want to go into its detail, I will go through and select on that, and now I can see its structure. And as I go through and select on the different items, you will see that they highlight on the screen as to where they are. Now, if you also look over on the right side where it talks about the used in, if these are things that I need to replace, then as I'm going and selecting on them, you can see there's an option in here to add to a shopping list. So I'm going to add this to my shopping list. Now you can see up here at the top, I now have that item as my shopping list, or in my shopping list. And I can continue to go into here. So that's where it took me for the frame, but each one of these items is active. And if there's something else I need to go into, I can drill into those areas as well until I find exactly what I'm looking for to go in and now replace or update. And once again, as I select on the items, there they are. So this makes it a lot easier. And once again, imagine this as you're in the field. So you're in the field, you're working on something, and something breaks. Now I need to go in and replace it. So yes, I do know that is a tiller that I'm going in and working on, but I actually know the part number that I'm looking for. So I can come over here and just type in the part number. Sorry, I don't need the star. And it goes in and brings up that part immediately. I can go in and select on it, and now brings it up, and I can immediately just go in and add this to my shopping cart. So there's my second item in my cart. So I can search by part number, or if I'm not sure of the part number, I can also go in and search based on, the actual type of object that it is. So I know it is a Rolex, and now I can go in and specify, which one am I working on? So I can go in and now start at this level and dig in. So this breaks it down into the parts. So you can see that these are just decals, but under here are the actual individual assemblies themselves. So I can come over here in this Rolex 1220. It will now take me to that level. And then I can, once again, dig down into this one to find the parts that I'm looking for. Now, as I said, this is using that application significant. So we're using a combination of what we built in Windchill, creating a service bomb for that, going in and using Creo Illustrate to create our nice, diagrams that we see, and being able to link that with significant. Oh, that was actually pretty cool. Yep. So even with that one, this one actually has, it says this part has expired from the assortment. So basically this isn't a part that I would go in and use anymore. Maybe it's been replaced. So I can go in and now use this replacement part. So all that information, once again, being stored and being accessible. As I said, this is very, 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 very beneficial for field service, for customers. Customer has a machine, it breaks, or a part of it breaks, or it gets worn down. They need to go in and order it. They can come on a website and they can go in and now dig down and find exactly what they're looking for. Once again, by either typing in the part number or drilling down using, just the selections. Now, when you have that shopping list, at this point, we can go through, I'm going to go in and say view the listing. What it does now, it allows me to go through and just simply download it. So if this is something I need to go through and just have a record of, I can download it as a PDF or an Excel file, or I can go in and email it. Now it says save a copy of it by sending it to yourself, but if I need these parts ordered, I can type in purchasing's email, and it'll get sent to purchasing, and they can go in and actually order these files. So all of this can be done directly from inside of their website. So this is not going into Windchill to find it, this is based on the Windchill information, but this is live on their website, and any of their customers, any of their service techs, or anybody can go in and access this information. All right, so at this point, I will conclude. Are there any questions from anybody? If you do have questions, you can type them into the question section in your webinar setup. So as we continue forward, if you do need training, things are kind of loosening up a little bit, but we still can go in and do virtual training. We can still go in and do on-site training, whatever is necessary or whatever you require. So depending on the restrictions of your company, we can still come in. Windchill 12 is coming out. We can go in and train on that, or any other pieces of software that we offer. We can come in and do demonstrations, things like that. So if you need any additional information from any of us, please feel free to reach out. As I said, we are doing training. As things open up, we'll be doing more activities. So just look for things from us. And if you do want to get in touch with any of us, Ephraim's email, Shay's email, and my email are all listed here for any technical questions. If you do have any questions from a sales perspective, you can go in and reach out to sales directly. But always keep track of us from our website. As I said, we have our training schedules on there. Any upcoming events that we have will be on there. So everything that you need, links to Significant, links to any of the other Windchill demos or anything like that will be there. But more importantly, if you do want to review this video or any of our other videos or webinars, you can go to our YouTube channel. So just go into YouTube, type in Boundary Systems, will come up, subscribe to our channel. And when you do that, every time we post a new video, you will get notified of that video that we've uploaded. And of course, you can always go through any of the previous videos that we've gone through and created. So at this time, I just want to say thank you for myself, Ephraim, and Shay. Thank you for your time, and have a great remainder of the day.